When the richest man said that I was his real daughter, my adoptive mother's family was maliciously whipping me. I refused to go home with him. My adoptive parents beat me because they dote on my younger brother. What if you dote on my fake sister? I don't want to be beaten anymore. With these 3 sentences, the richest man's guilt reached its peak. I smiled. The play I had been setting up for so long was finally about to begin. When my biological parents found me, I was being brutally beaten by my adoptive mother. The iron hook just pulled out from the stove landed on my back one after another. Vaguely, I even smelled the aroma of roasted meat. It was at this moment that my biological parents suddenly burst in. "Stop! Is this how you abuse my precious daughter?" My adoptive mother was out of control and wouldn't listen to any dissuasion. My biological mother accidentally got burned while trying to stop her and immediately burst into tears from the pain. I looked at them expressionlessly. Did it hurt? It did, but not as much as when I was burned alive by a gas explosion in my last life. My biological mother and I were both sent to the hospital at the same time. As soon as they heard that my biological mother was injured, the 2 children of the richest man's family finally all rushed over. My biological mother's hospital bed was surrounded by people. "Mom, how could that woman be so vicious? Did she hit you with this thing?" I didn't even need to open my eyes to know that it was my good elder brother, Robin, speaking. He also played a part in my death in my last life. "Mom, does it hurt? I should have gone with you. Let me blow on it for you." Diana was crying and sniffling. If you didn't know better, you'd think she had lost her mother at a young age. This was the murderer who had harmed me in my last life. The adopted daughter of the richest man's family. No. She should be said to be the biological daughter of my adoptive mother. All the beatings I had endured over the years were for her. It was uncomfortable for me to lie face down, but when I moved slightly, I gasped in pain. This hiss was particularly prominent in the ward. That family then remembered that there was also me beside them. My biological mother looked over somewhat awkwardly. "Nina, are you okay?" "I'm fine. I won't die." I lowered my eyes and reluctantly tugged at the corners of my mouth. "I'm used to it, but you have delicate skin. It must hurt a lot to be burned, right?" I emphasized these 2 words. Only then did my biological father run to my bedside to check my injuries. I didn't dodge, because the injuries on my back were horrifying. In my last life, I was always afraid that they would feel sorry for me, so I had never shown the injuries on my back. Now, I want them to take a good look. The moment my biological parents looked over, they let out an exclamation. Diana was so scared that she directly hid in Robin's arms. Goodness, how could someone's back be like this? Robin, acting like a good elder brother, directly covered Diana's eyes with his big hand. Was it really that scary? I couldn't see clearly, but I felt that it should be lacerated, with new injuries on top of the old ones. My biological mother forgot about her own hand and directly pounced beside me. Her still warm tears fell drop by drop on my neck, sliding down my neck to my back, making my wounds ache a little more. "Nina, come home with Mom. We'll never go back to that family again. Those 2 people are simply not human. How could they abuse you like this?" My biological father was also somewhat touched. "Come home with us and take care of your body." I pretended to look at them with longing eyes. After being lost in thought for a moment, I still shook my head. My adoptive parents beat me because they dote on my younger brother. What if you dote on my fake sister? I don't want to be beaten anymore. With these 3 sentences, my biological parents' guilt reached its peak. I lowered my eyes and secretly hooked the corners of my lips. In my last life, I was submissive and let others arrange my life. Although I was sensible and considerate, I ended up with a tragic death. In this life, I will return everything I have experienced to Diana. Despite my biological parents' repeated assurances, I still didn't go home with them, after all. They won't cherish the family affection that they get all of a sudden. By taking that step back, the identities of the hunter and the prey will be completely reversed. I went back to my small rental apartment, which was only 20 square meters. The only inconvenience was that I couldn't reach my back when applying medicine, but it wasn't a big deal. I was used to sleeping face down. Just as I was about to fall asleep, the phone rang. It was my biological father. I could probably guess what he wanted from me. I deliberately waited until the phone rang 7 or 8 times before answering it slowly with a thick nasal voice. "Nina, we have already found a lawyer and are going to sue your adoptive parents. You come over tomorrow to testify." I yawned silently. Sure enough, it was about the lawsuit, but I won't agree. After all, if I send them to prison, How will Diana experience my hard life in the future? Sue my parents? Well, forget it. A child without a mother is like a weed. Although my parents often beat and scolded me, at least I still had a home. I don't want to lose my home, Nina. There was an endless silence on the other end of the phone. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up. Don't mention this matter again in the future. I don't want to be a child without parents. I turned off the phone. If I'm not wrong, those two people probably won't be able to sleep tonight. But what does it have to do with me, in my last life? Although they weren't the direct culprits of my death, they were still closely related to it, except for the burning pain on my back. I slept quite well that night. However, at 7 o'clock the next morning, my biological parents came directly to my rental apartment to find me. Their eyes were red, and their words were filled with pleading. Nina, come home with Mom and Dad. You silly child. What kind of nonsense did you say last night? Mom and Dad's place is your real home. We are a real family. How could you be a child without parents? To show their sincerity, they brought 2 nannies and carried 3 boxes, big and small, but my rental apartment was too small. After everyone came in, it was so crowded that it was difficult to even turn around. My eyes also turned red, and I looked at them timidly. Really, Mom and Dad, won't you dote on Diana? After all, she has lived with you for 20 years. Mom and Dad shook their heads firmly. In my last life, I didn't know how to fight back. And they were deceived by Diana's acting skills. They educated me, scolded me, and eventually even grew to dislike me. This time, I want them to always be on my side. Compared to my last life, I did gain something from going home this time. My biological parents held a family meeting. In front of everyone, they took out 2 bank cards and a property certificate. Nina, you've suffered grievances outside these years. There is a total of 10 million yuan in the card for you as pocket money. This house has been transferred to your name. You can move in at any time. From now on, we'll never go back to that shabby rental apartment. I pretended to be flustered. This is too much. I don't deserve all this. As soon as I finished speaking, my biological parents felt even worse and insisted on stuffing the things into my hands. Nina, you take it first. This is all you deserve. In the future, the company shares will also be transferred to you. I pursed my lips. Then, thank you, Mom and Dad. Just by calling them Mom and Dad, the old couple was moved to tears again. I also seized the opportunity to cry along. It was a harmonious scene of a loving mother and filial child. But Diana wasn't happy. She sat on the edge of the sofa, constantly pulling at the hem of her clothes, biting her lower lip and staring at me fiercely. I raised the corners of my lips and slowly moved to Diana's side, and handed her one of the cards. Sister, I'll share half of the money in the card with you. I've been through a lot of stress these years, and sometimes my emotions get out of control. Please don't hold it against me, okay? The key point was, sometimes my emotions get out of control. Unfortunately, they didn't understand. My parents just thought I was sensible. My biological father said, Nina is right. She has suffered a lot of grievances from those damned adoptive parents. No one is allowed to bully Nina in the future. Diana forced a smile and didn't say anything. Robin frowned and looked at me with hostility. I didn't mind at all. I've learned to be smart and lie low. I can go crazy later when these fake siblings can't stand it anymore. My biological mother wanted to show me around the villa, but Diana suddenly interrupted halfway. Mom, I'm familiar with the house. Let me show my sister around. You go and rest. You usually go to bed at this time. The milk has already been placed by your bedside. I smiled. What milk by the bedside? I lived here for so long in my last life. How come I didn't know that my biological mother had the habit of drinking milk before going to bed? It was obvious that she couldn't wait to assert her dominance. My biological mother was also taken aback for a moment, but she didn't say anything. She patted Diana's hand on the back twice with a look of relief. Thank you, Diana. Mom is really exhausted today. Daughter, you're such a sweetie. Mom is so lucky to have you. Before she could finish speaking, I pretended to be eager and took over the conversation. Mom, is the milk sweet? Back at home, only my younger brother could drink milk. I licked my lips. Sure enough, my biological mother somewhat uneasily let go of Diana. When she looked at me, her eyes instantly turned red again. Diana, go and help your sister heat a cup of milk too and send it to her bedroom. I shook my head obediently. Mom, I'll go and make a cup of milk for my sister. I'm the elder sister, so I should let her have it. 3 minutes later, right under my mother's watchful eyes. Diana endured the anger and drank a cup of milk. I lowered my eyes and hooked the corners of my lips. It's good that she drank it, only when she drank it can my plan be better accomplished. I raised my eyes again with an innocent expression. Mom, I'll heat milk for you and my sister every day. Diana was somewhat reluctant, but my biological mother couldn't help but touch my head and forced a smile. Okay. Diana's face instantly turned ugly, and she gave me a fierce glare. Was she already angry? I couldn't help but laugh. In fact, in my last life, I didn't have many affectionate interactions with my biological parents. In my last life, I was timid and cowardly, and the only thing in my mind was to let things slide. Within less than a week of arriving, I fell into all kinds of framed and traps set by Diana. At first, my parents would still say a few words in my defense, but later, under Diana's repeated framing, they were extremely disappointed in me. Later, there was a gas explosion, and the villa was burned down. It was only because of their repeated insistence that they managed to dig out a few pieces of my ashes from the ruins. Merits and demerits offset each other. I don't have much affection for these parents, but I can't say that I hate them to the core either. As for Robin, he didn't hesitate to help Diana do all sorts of evil things, without the interference of those two siblings. I got along quite harmoniously with my biological parents. It was just that my biological mother, as if trying to make up for the lack of motherly love, insisted on tucking me in every night, which seemed to greatly irritate Diana. One night, Diana called my biological mother crying, "Mom, I feel so uncomfortable. I think I have a fever. Mom, can you stay with me, just like when I was a child?" After hearing this, my biological mother frowned and ran over without even having time to put on her shoes. I turned on the light unhurriedly and followed slowly. After all, Diana's act was meant for me. If I didn't go, how could she make a scene? When I arrived, Robin was already standing guard in Diana's bedroom. At this time, the family doctor also put away the stethoscope. "Madam, Miss Diana is suffering from excessive internal heat. She must have been anxious and stressed these 2 days, which is why she has a fever in the middle of the night." I chuckled softly, seeing that I had been occupying my biological mother all day since I came back. It was no wonder she was anxious. Diana's cheeks were hot and red, and her starry eyes were filled with tears, looking extremely pitiful. My parents were extremely distressed and directly rushed to the bedside. "Diana, how could you be anxious and stressed all of a sudden? Are you in a lot of pain?" Diana's voice was weak, as if she was on the verge of fainting. "Mom, I'm fine. You go and take care of my sister." She used this trick in my last life. Sure enough, as soon as she finished speaking, Robin gave me a cold look. "Diana has been healthy since she was a child and rarely had a fever. How come it's so coincidental that she fell ill as soon as you came?" I leaned against the door and listened quietly. This was nothing. In my last life, Robin accused me of stealing Diana's things and almost broke my hand. My biological father, the richest man, scolded him. "How do you talk to your sister?" This was just a simple rebuke, without much effect. I took the initiative to give in. "Forget it. Let Mom stay with my sister." My biological mother was taken aback for a moment, but then she also let out a sigh of relief. I turned around and went back to my bedroom, saying as I walked, "But Mom should keep her distance from me. After all, the flu is very serious recently." My parents were in a dilemma, and Robin immediately shouted at me, "You're so delicate." I turned around and explained seriously. "The doctor said that I'm malnourished and have a low immune system. It's best to avoid contact with the source of the virus." To prove my words, I also shook my sleeves. This was already the smallest sized pajamas, but they were still too big for me. A trace of pity flashed in my parents' eyes. Robin gritted his teeth. "You're just trying to compete with Diana. I'm also sick and want to be with my biological mother." "Is there anything wrong with that?" I said softly. "If you can't divide your time, then we can each stay with our own mother." Diana's eyes trembled when she heard these words. I know that this is what she fears the most. After all, she has gotten used to the good life here. Who would want to go back and endure hardship and beatings? Robin took 2 big steps and stood in front of me. Just from his height, he could already overwhelm me. "How could you be so vicious? In the end, you just want to send Diana away, right?" I took half a step back, remembering the things in my last life. There was an uncontrollable chill in my eyes as I looked at Robin. Vicious. If it weren't for me, the one who would have been brutally beaten should have been her. Robin pursed his lips in anger and finally pointed at me and looked at our parents. Is this the daughter you went through so much trouble to find? As soon as she came back, she started to bully Diana. She has learned all the viciousness of her adoptive parents. I laughed out loud. I am indeed vicious. When did I ever say that I was kind? But Diana and I are about the same. I just don't know which one is more vicious, the kind that comes from being influenced by one's surroundings or the kind that is inherited through blood. In the end, my biological mother still chose to go back to the bedroom with me. She patted me gently, but her face was still full of worry. Go and be with your daughter if you want. I'll be fine. It's okay, Mom will stay with you. I pretended to smile sweetly and then closed my eyes and fell asleep. I must get a good rest. After all, according to Diana's habits, I'm afraid there will be a lot of trouble tomorrow. When I got up the next day, Diana was sitting on the sofa looking sickly. Sister, did you sleep well last night? I ignored her and stretched gently. But Diana quickly approached and let out a cry of surprise. Sister, why did you pinch me? It hurts so much. I found it a bit ridiculous. In 2 lifetimes, she still uses the same tricks. In my last life, the whole family doted on her, and I couldn't explain clearly because I was timid and cowardly. So these little things accumulated bit by bit, leading to my final tragedy. It's a pity that in this life, I won't let her slander me anymore. When did I pinch you? While I was speaking, the whole family rushed out in a hurry, especially Robin. Without saying a word, he pushed me. I didn't dodge and let myself hit the wall. After letting out a muffled groan, my biological father was the first to notice something was wrong. Robin, I lowered my eyes and didn't say anything, feeling the scab on my back that had just formed break open. It seemed that there was some blood seeping out. My biological mother also noticed the problem. She stopped in her tracks as she rushed towards Diana and turned to look at me. Nina, you're bleeding again. I showed a brave smile. Diana, who had been crying out in pain, seeing that the situation was not good, immediately stood up. I'm sorry, Mom, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have cried out in pain just now. Brother isn't used to having an extra sister in the family yet. He pushed her just to stand up for me. Before she could finish speaking, I interrupted her with an innocent look. Stand up for you. I'm his real sister. Why did he push me for you, a fake sister? Diana looked at our parents helplessly and then at me. You pinched me just now. Sister, forget it. Let's not talk about this, okay? Me pinch her. I smiled and decided to go crazy directly. I directly passed Robin and grabbed Diana's stomach hard. The flesh there was still tender, and it hurt a lot when pinched. She howled in pain. Mom and Dad, look at what she's trying to do. It hurts so much. Let go, let go. Robin wanted to do something, but he was afraid of opening my wound again. His hands were stretched out in the air, not knowing where to put them, and he could only be furiously angry beside us. Did you hear that? Let go quickly. My parents also stretched out their hands towards me. Nina, what's wrong with you? Let go quickly. When I let go, I gave Diana's stomach a hard tug, and she burst into tears from the pain. Why are you crying? Didn't you say that I pinched you just now? I didn't pinch you originally, but since you said so, I think it would be a pity not to pinch you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I secretly pinched several parts of her body that were easy to feel pain. Diana was crying so hard that she was out of breath. That's about enough. I let go of her and was about to leave my stunned parents and go back to my room. Just as I took a step, Robin took a step and blocked my way. I looked up at him with a half smile. Not losing the momentum at all. This guy wants to stand up for Diana again. You pinched her until she cried. You were clearly doing it on purpose. What a double standard guy. I turned around and faced my back to him. What about you? My back is bleeding again. Did you do it on purpose too? Robin opened his mouth and pointed at me angrily, saying, You're unreasonable. People like you who never let up when they're in the right shouldn't be in our family at all. I only have Diana as my sister. I laughed. Fine, but Diana isn't Mom and Dad's real child. If you want, you can leave with her. Her biological father likes boys the most. There should be a place for you in their family. My biological mother's face looked a bit unpleasant, but I don't care. Mom, I've told you, I was beaten and suffered a lot of stimulation in my adoptive parents' house, so my temper is not good, and I might go crazy at any time. Of course, it's not too late for you to regret now. As soon as I finished speaking, Diana's eyes lit up, and she even forgot to cry for a moment. Mom, let her go quickly. Before she could finish speaking, my biological parents frowned. Nina, you've suffered in the past. Robin was so angry that he waved his hand. Fine, if she doesn't leave, I'll take Diana and leave. I won't stay in a family with her. That would be great. I couldn't ask for more. But Robin is stupid, while Diana isn't. She shook my stupid brother's arm. Forget it, brother. Let's not make Mom and Dad angry and worried. Look, Diana still doesn't dare after all. Before going upstairs, I raised my eyebrows at Diana provocatively. This time, I won't lose to her again. A week later, the injuries on my back were almost healed. To welcome me home, my biological parents specially held a banquet to introduce my identity to everyone. The whole family of 5 attended. The designer sent a lot of evening gowns, but this time Diana was unusually modest. Mom, it seems that this is my sister's first time wearing an evening gown. Let her choose the one she likes first. I glanced at her. Why does she always have to step on me in the mud even when she says a word? But she seems to have forgotten that the stinky mud she can't avoid is her original destination. My fingertips slid over those evening gowns. I'll take this one. I chose a conservative style dress because there were big and small scars all over my body. Sister, let me help you put it on. You have to be careful with the evening gown. What if it gets torn? I didn't refuse, but I also took over her words. If it gets torn, just buy a new one. Sister, you've been raised in our family since you were a child. Logically speaking, you shouldn't be so stingy. Diana was taken aback. She only showed a cold face after entering the fitting room. Dear sister, there will be a lot of people here today. You won't get stage fright, will you? I gave her a sideways glance. I'm a devil who crawled out of hell. Do I still need to be afraid of people? Her fingertips gently slid across my back, and finally, she helped me zip up the dress. Then, don't embarrass Mom and Dad. I laughed. Embarrassing, of course. I know what Diana means. This banquet in my last life almost made me depressed. Diana tampered with my dress. Just when Mom and Dad were introducing me to everyone, Diana deliberately stepped on my dress. The strapless evening gown slid down right in front of everyone. In a panic, someone even took a photo with a flash. This time, I must let her experience the despair of being exposed like this. After the banquet started, Mom and Dad took me around among various presidents and directors. Diana's cold gaze was always fixed on me. Mom, I'm going outside to get some air and will come back later. I deliberately avoided the crowd and went to the seaside where there were the fewest people. The figure behind me followed me at a distance. Stop pretending, Diana. I stopped and turned around with a smile. Sure enough, Diana stood out from not far away a moment later. I sized up the evening gown she was wearing. The white long dress almost dragged on the ground, and the design from the chest to the waist was in the shape of feathers. It's exactly the same as the evening gown she chose in my last life. That's good. I didn't work in vain last night. Sister, why do you have so much resentment towards me? I don't think I've ever done anything to hurt you, have I? Isn't it better for us to get along harmoniously? Diana walked up to me with a beaming smile. The 2 small dimples on her face made her look harmless. Who would believe that such a sweet-looking person would deliberately cause a gas explosion in order to kill me? She even burned down that villa. Mom and Dad aren't here. Stop pretending. Diana was taken aback for a moment, and her smiling face was quickly replaced by a ferocious expression. She wants to swallow me alive and then throw me into the sea. Why weren't you beaten to death? I smiled and provoked her. If I die, won't you be the daughter of a murderer? Sure enough, this is always a sore spot that Diana can't mention. She quickly walked up to me, not even caring that sand got into her high heels. Those are your parents. You should go back there. Why do you have to come back and fight me for all this? I corrected her word by word. I'm not fighting. You've occupied everything that belongs to me. I was very calm, but Diana seemed to have gone crazy. It seemed that she ate too much of the hallucinogenic drug I gave her and went a bit crazy. She suddenly started fighting with me regardless of everything. The hems of our evening gowns were both wet, but she firmly choked my neck and wouldn't let go. The harder she squeezed, the wider the curve of my smile became. Just die, die. There's no surveillance here. No one will blame me if you die. When I was about to suffocate, my hand reached around to the back of her evening gown and tore hard at the weakest part that I had prepared in advance. Diana was stunned for a moment. With a rip sound, the beautiful evening gown was torn apart by the seaside. Diana let out a scream in fright. but even though she instinctively put her hands on her chest, I still saw the red hickeys on her chest with my sharp eyes. I was surprised. Does Diana have a boyfriend, Nina? I ignored her and with a bit of effort, I directly tore her dress from top to bottom. A naked beauty curled up and hugged herself by the seaside. I took a few steps back and looked at Diana up and down. I watched her embarrassed appearance with no emotions in my heart. Why are you covering up? When you treated me like that, why didn't you think about how embarrassing it was? Before Diana could speak, I turned around and left. She kept roaring and cursing behind me unwillingly, but she didn't follow me. After all, she couldn't enter that lively banquet in this state. I cleaned my dress hem and high heels, but when I entered the venue, I ran into Robin again. There was some annoyance and nervousness between his eyebrows, and his words were full of impatience towards me. Where's Diana? I squinted my eyes and thought of the red hickeys on Diana's chest. When he questioned me for the second time, I pointed in the direction of the seaside. I just saw her go that way. Behave yourself. After Robin warned me, he left in a hurry. I had a guess in my heart and directly turned to find my parents. Mom, it's too stuffy inside. Let's go for a walk by the seaside together. Brother and Diana also went there just now. I want to set off fireworks by the seaside. Is that okay? It's different from my last life. In this life, although she won't obey me in everything, she won't be as disgusted with me as she was in my last life either. She's still willing to fulfill my small requests. Soon, a group of us went to the seaside in a mighty way. We hadn't walked a few steps when we saw Robin and Diana not far away. The scene was quite beautiful. On Diana's shoulders was my good brother's coat, and her two thighs were still bare, and Robin, his head was buried in Diana's neck, and his hand was still in the motion of taking off his pants. Wow, it's intense. Before I could say anything, someone in the crowd was startled first. Are these two siblings having sex by the seaside behind people's backs? The voice was neither too loud nor too soft, and they just heard it not far away. Diana let out a scream. But she only cared about covering her upper body and couldn't take care of her lower body. In the end, she simply used the coat to cover her face tightly. I turned my head curiously and took a look. Sure enough, my biological parents' faces turned pale, and they were extremely ashamed and angry. Two beasts. The banquet ended in a farce like this. My parents took a few deep breaths and finally turned to me and said, "Nina, we'll hold it again for you next time." I nodded indifferently. The atmosphere in the living room was tense, and there was only Diana's sobbing and gasping. Mom and Dad, I'm really wronged. Don't be angry, okay? This is all because of Nina. Before she could finish speaking, the teacup in my biological father's hand, the richest man, flew out and smashed against the wall. The boiling tea splashed everywhere. Even at this moment, you still want to blame Nina. What does what you two did by the seaside have to do with Nina? Although you're not my biological daughter, you two are siblings. Aren't you ashamed? You've already embarrassed me completely. Robin kept glaring at me fiercely, but the next second, he was dealt with. You still don't repent. Robin withdrew his gaze and looked at the ground quietly for a while. I thought he would continue to accuse me regardless, but unexpectedly, he actually took Diana's hand. I squinted my eyes. No wonder Robin always helped the evildoer in my last life. It turns out that these two have already been having an affair. My biological mother was so angry at this scene that she kept stroking her chest. You two, when did this happen? Nina has only been back for a week. It's impossible for you two to be together in such a short time. Robin knelt straight but didn't say a word. Did he acquiesce to what Mom said? I was also a bit shocked. What kind of operation is it for siblings to be together? Judging from the marks on Diana's chest, both of them are quite wild. The son is having an affair with the daughter and still doesn't repent. My biological father slapped the tea table loudly. Beasts. You two are simply beasts. Diana, I've always regarded you as my biological daughter. You're not welcome in this family anymore. Get out. As soon as these words were spoken, both of them panicked. Robin couldn't bear to let the person he loved leave. As for Diana, she simply didn't want to go back to that home. She crawled a few steps on her knees and hugged her parents' legs, begging for mercy and admitting her mistake. Mom and Dad, I know I was wrong. I will keep a distance from my brother in the future, and I will never act recklessly again. Mom, she cried bitterly, but her parents didn't say a word. Robin wished he could kill me with his eyes to vent his anger. Mom, Dad, anyway, Diana isn't your biological daughter. So what's wrong with us getting married, now that Nina is back? Doesn't it just work out for us? When he said this, his biological father kicked him in a fit of anger. He hit the wall just like I did that day and couldn't get up for a long time. Diana just knelt there and didn't go to help him. Before, none of us knew that Diana wasn't our biological daughter. You two being together is incest. Don't you know that it's immoral? How dare you say such things? I wish I could strangle you to death. All of you get back to your rooms and don't step out of the room even half a step. Before this love-struck couple left, they didn't forget to give me a glare. I also went back to my bedroom, and I locked the door tightly from the inside. These two crazy people might do anything when they go crazy. I must speed up, otherwise, staying in this house is full of dangers. This matter had already fermented on the internet and stayed on the trending list for 3 consecutive days. The business of the richest man's family was also affected quite a bit. Everyone was so busy that they were in a complete mess, and I, wearing my best clothes, went back to my adoptive mother's place. In that old, run-down small house, I could hear my younger brother's howling cries from a long distance away. The moment I opened the door, a stinky shoe was thrown at me. Fortunately, I had rich experience and dodged it with a quick sidestep. Ha ha ha, you fool, the idiot is back. That 6-year-old brother was laughing gigglingly at home with his butt naked. I frowned in disgust and finally fought back unceremoniously for once. The shoe hit him right on the forehead, and he cried from the pain. Who the hell is bullying my son? My adoptive mother came out of the kitchen cursing, and the oil stains on the spatula flowed down onto her hand. Oh, it's you. What are you coming back for? She didn't dare to touch me anymore. The scars all over my body were evidence to sue her. Your biological mother should have given you a lot of money. Look at how well dressed you are now. Her greedy eyes swept back and forth over me. I'm sure that if it weren't for my status as the daughter of the richest man, she would rush up and tear my clothes off to sell them. However, it's her greed that I need now that I'm gone. Don't you want your biological daughter to come back? My adoptive mother waved her hand disdainfully. What for? She's a money loser. Even if she comes back, she'll just spend my money. I moved closer and corrected her seriously. You're wrong. She has been in the richest man's family for so many years. Even a little bit that leaks from her fingers is enough for you to buy a nice house. She can also afford to buy a house for your son in the future. My adoptive mother's eyes lit up. You don't know yet. She's been together with my brother recently. If she becomes our family's daughter-in-law in the future, whose do you think everything will be? My adoptive mother excitedly grabbed my arm. Do your parents agree? I pretended to be in a dilemma and shook my head. For such a big thing as getting married, both sets of parents always have to be involved. When I got home, Diana and Robin were just let out to have a meal. Don't be too cocky too soon, Robin threatened me. But I just ignored him, a grasshopper after the autumn frost. Why should I bother with him? Early the next morning, I was woken up by a rough, loud voice. Mother-in-law-to-be, I'm here to discuss the marriage of our 2 children with you. Look, this matter has already fermented so much on the internet. The 2 children should get married as soon as possible, right? Then came my father's angry scolding. Who's your mother-in-law-to-be? Get out of here right now, or I'll call the police. He thought he could intimidate my adoptive mother, but he didn't know that my adoptive mother was originally a shrew who could argue even when she was in the wrong. What's more, she thought her daughter had been wronged and had lost her virginity in the Chen family. With a loud howl, she directly sat on the ground and slapped her thighs frantically with both hands. Where's my daughter? Where is my daughter? Your heartless family wouldn't have killed my daughter, would you? Give me back my daughter. I smiled and directly opened Diana's door. I grabbed her, who was eavesdropping, and pulled her out. Daughter, you're my real daughter, right? Quick, call me Mom. I'm here to stand up for you today. Have you been wronged? Don't be afraid. My adoptive mother stepped on our family's tea table. Let's see who can bully her today. Diana's face turned red from her actions. She pushed and shoved to get away from my adoptive mother. Don't talk nonsense. Who are you calling your daughter? I don't know you at all. TSK, my adoptive mother looked at me, and I immediately stood up to testify. Diana, this is your biological mother. You haven't seen each other for 20 years. You should call her Mom. My adoptive mother turned our house upside down all by herself. Robin was also called out by her, and she called him son-in-law affectionately one after another. Enough. My father couldn't stand it anymore. We won't agree to this. You'd better watch your words. What? My adoptive mother's voice rose by 8 decibels. Then what about my daughter's innocence? So many people have seen my daughter's nude photos, and her chest is covered with scars from your son. Why don't you say anything about that? Now you start, Mom, Diana called out with a red face. As soon as the word, Mom, came out, she also showed a look of, can you stop talking nonsense? You may not care about your reputation, but I do. My adoptive mother squinted her eyes. I quietly took half a step back and hid behind my biological mother. Sure enough, the next second, my adoptive mother unbuckled her belt. How do you talk to me? Care about your reputation? It's you who did those shameless things. Why didn't you feel ashamed when you were hugging that man? The belt landed on Diana's back with a cracking sound. She had never been beaten before and had no experience. At this time, she should curl up and only expose her back to feel a little better. Hey, why are you hitting her? My biological mother tried to dissuade her, but she didn't dare to reach out because of the lesson from the first time she tried to stop it. Diana cried out in pain from the beating. Finally, Robin ran over and held her in his arms, but my biological parents couldn't bear to look anymore. After a round of scolding, my adoptive mother didn't stop until she was too tired to hit anymore. You don't want them to get married, right? Fine, then you compensate us with money. My daughter has been seen naked by people all over the world, who will marry her in the future. Give us 200,000 yuan, otherwise, we won't let this go easily. Mom, what are you talking about? Diana stomped her feet in a hurry. I knew she thought the amount was too little. My biological parents also felt sorry. Finally, with my persuasion, they gave 2 million yuan, of course. I had my own purpose for asking for such a large amount, but Diana didn't want to accept it and even wanted to kneel down. Mom and Dad, I really don't want to leave. Please, don't make me go, okay? But as soon as she bent down, another lash of the belt landed on her. Robin's eyes were red, and he also questioned, Mom, are you really so heartless? She has been your daughter for 20 years, in my last life. Robin also said this sentence. It made my biological parents, who had only once wavered and wanted to send Diana away, soften their hearts, but this time, they just looked full of resentment. You also know that she has been our daughter for 20 years. If it weren't for your recklessness, our family of 5 would have been so harmonious and enviable. But now, Diana can't be our family's daughter, and she definitely can't be our family's daughter-in-law. I guess this sentence greatly stimulated Diana. She suddenly stopped crying and sneered. Harmonious? How can a family of 5 be harmonious? Even now, you still blame me for acting recklessly. If you hadn't suddenly brought her back, how could I have been with Robin? Diana's breakdown stunned my parents. They couldn't imagine that their always well-behaved and sensible daughter could have such a hysterical side. Diana looked at us, crying and laughing, with tears and snot flowing down her face. My biological father held back his anger. What nonsense are you talking about? We have always held you in the palm of our hands all these years. Even after Nina came back, we never said we would send you away. What are you jealous of? After my biological mother was stunned, her face looked a bit unpleasant, but Diana let out a cold laugh, with deep hatred in her eyes. Don't send me away. The only reason you don't send me away is that you're afraid of losing face. You're afraid of being pointed at and called selfish, cold-blooded, and heartless. You love me. Only a fool would believe that. You forced me to be with Robin, even if it's embarrassing. You can only blame yourselves. Diana looked around the villa, and the complex emotions in her eyes made her look quite crazy. So what if it's embarrassing? I hope you go bankrupt. No one can continue to enjoy what I can't enjoy. I curse you all die for me, die outside, get hit by a car, or the plane explodes or... Before she could finish, there was a loud slapping sound. My biological father raised his hand and gave her a hard slap. Diana seemed to be slapped back to her senses. She opened her mouth, and fear and regret flashed in her eyes. Dad, but before she could finish, my adoptive mother seemed to have found an excuse to ask for money. Who told you to hit her? 10,000 yuan for one slap. My biological father took out a stack of cash from the cabinet of the tea table and threw it out viciously. Get out now, if you dare to come again. I won't be so polite. Although that mother and daughter had walked far away, the sounds of crying and cursing still came from time to time. I looked at Robin. This time, he seemed to have become my best assistant. Mom, Dad, if you don't let Diana marry me, I won't come back to this home either. I'll go find her. Even though Diana had said those things, Robin still didn't repent. Robin was also kicked out of the house by his angry parents. I quietly took a sip of water before I opened my mouth and said, "Mom and Dad, are you really not going to let my brother come back?" My father's tone was cold. "He doesn't deserve it." The corners of my mouth curled up silently. A week later, I went to my adoptive mother's house again, but there was no one in that house anymore. Just as a neighbor came out to take out the trash, I asked her, "Auntie, why isn't this family here anymore?" The aunt looked gossipy and pulled me aside, sighing, "Them. I heard they won the lottery and directly bought a building. Now they've moved to the city and even invited us to a banquet. It's just showing off, you know." I raised my eyebrows. They sure acted fast. According to the address the aunt gave me, I went looking for them. They had also bought a single-family villa. I didn't go inside the villa, but I could see the inside through the floor-to-ceiling windows. My adoptive mother was sitting on a high-end sofa with the child, watching TV. Diana, oh no. Diana was wearing the clothes I used to wear. She was kneeling on the floor, feebly wiping the floor, as if she might faint at any moment. That 6-year-old little troublemaker was stomping around in the place she had just cleaned and accidentally fell flat on his face. The belt lashed down on Diana's back one after another. I couldn't hear clearly, but I could guess what my adoptive mother was scolding. As Diana dodged, she happened to meet my gaze through the window. I honked the car horn, which was my way of greeting her. She surely wouldn't fail to recognize a Lamborghini. Diana, who had been dodging, stared at me in a daze. The belt landed solidly on her body, and my adoptive mother's yellow teeth seemed almost ready to be gritted to pieces. I waved at her. My adoptive mother wouldn't let her off. This should be more tormenting than being burned to death in a fire, right? As for the remaining money they had, I looked around but didn't see the shadow of my gambling addict adoptive father. But it didn't matter. I knew that person well. 2 million yuan had greatly fueled that man's ambition. Even though they bought a house, it would only be a matter of a month before they were bankrupt and had to sell their wife and children. I'll just wait. Both the children they had raised for 20 years were kicked out of the house, so my biological parents were in a really bad mood, especially my biological mother, whose eyes had been swollen for the past 2 days. I had a complicated feeling towards them, just like in my last life. They seemed to never think. Diana and Robin were kicked out of the house, and they never suspected that I had been the one to push things along, just like in my last life. When I was framed countless times and burned in a fire, they never suspected Diana. I lowered my eyes. I stopped thinking about these biological parents. I started to wonder what those two would do next. After all, just because they were kicked out of the house didn't mean they wouldn't take action against me again. Suddenly, I thought of the way I died in my last life. I think I should make some preparations. 3 days later, in the morning, while I was washing up, I heard some rustling noises in the house. When I opened the door, it was Diana and Robin. I raised my eyebrows. Robin was quite capable. He actually managed to steal her away from that couple. I asked in a calm tone, "Why are you back?" Strangely enough, these two were acting out of character and were actually being friendly to me, and although Diana's smile was forced, all the intense hatred in her eyes was actually hidden. "We're just here to get some things. You can go back to sleep. We'll leave as soon as we get our things." Robin looked at me and said, "You wouldn't report this little thing to Mom and Dad, would you?" I smiled and said, "Of course not." I went back to my bedroom and quietly listened to the sounds outside. Sure enough, they went into the kitchen. I let out a sigh of relief. I guessed right. They still wanted to use the same trick as in my last life to kill me. Fortunately, I had already made preparations. I quickly packed some things, locked the door of my bedroom, and left the house when they weren't paying attention. Just before leaving the house, I lit an incense stick, wrapped it with flammable materials, and threw it into a hidden corner of the kitchen. When I closed the door of the house, I locked it completely from the outside. As long as they didn't take action, nothing would happen. If they did take action, they would be the ones to receive their comeuppance. I had only walked less than 100 meters away when there was a commotion behind me, gas leakage, and it only took an instant for it to catch fire when it met an open flame. There was a huge blaze in the villa, and the scalding heat made my whole body feel hot. I quietly walked a little further away. I could truly understand that feeling of being helpless and having no one to turn to. This time, it was their turn, just like in my last life. It wasn't until the fire had burned for a while that a neighbor called the police. When my parents arrived, I was sitting on the road with a sooty face, crying loudly, "Nina, Nina, are you hurt?" Mom was so scared. "It's good that you're okay, it's good that you're okay." My parents hugged me tightly, so tightly that I could hardly breathe. I stared intently at the direction of the fire scene, but to my surprise, Robin managed to escape. Compared to his burns, he seemed to be scared out of his wits. Fire, fire, such a big fire, it flared up all of a sudden, hee, such a big fire, my wife is still in there. The moment my parents saw Robin, they almost fainted. Why is he at home? I cried even louder. Brother and Diana came back together and said they were here to get some things. I was afraid they wouldn't like me, so I went out. Who knew it would turn out like this when I came back? I wanted to save them, but I couldn't get in. I acted so realistically that I almost vomited from crying. The accident was so serious that the police officers intervened directly. After being examined by professionals, it was determined to be a gas explosion, and it was man-made. The perpetrators were Robin and Diana, but Diana was dead, and Robin had gone crazy. As soon as the result came out, my biological father almost couldn't catch his breath and was only able to recover after being helped by others. And my biological mother let out a scream and fainted right away. After all the chaos, they were all sent to the hospital. I went to find Robin, who was locked up in another villa of our family. His face was burned and disfigured, and he was scared out of his mind. I grabbed his arm and leaned in closer to look at him. "Robin, do you regret it?" He covered his head like a madman and shouted, "Ghost, there are ghosts, help." I smiled. Essentially, he was right. I was the evil spirit who had crawled out of hell after he and Diana had killed me with their consciences gone in my last life. But the difference between me and an evil spirit was, after I got my revenge, I would embrace a new and different life. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, let's continue to see another similar moving story. You are a psychiatric patient. You suffer from severe mania and paranoia, and have a strong antisocial tendency. You have just escaped from a psychiatric hospital, but in the next second, you have traveled into this literature about the dead. Here, you are required to make selfless dedication to everyone. Finally, use your own death to push the story to its climax. Everyone will suddenly come to their senses after losing you. They will regret what they have done and miss the past they had with you. Upon hearing this, you smile softly. Firstly, you are a psychiatric patient. Secondly, you really like this world where no one calls the police even when the most unreasonable things happen. You are a psychiatric patient. You have been preparing for many days in order to escape from the psychiatric hospital. Just 5 minutes ago, you knocked down the nurse who came to do the ward round and changed into her clothes in the blind spot of the surveillance. Thanks to your proper disguise, you successfully escaped from the psychiatric hospital. However, the next second you stepped onto the highway, you were knocked down by a runaway truck. When you woke up again, you became the female protagonist of a sadomasochistic novel. The thing called the system in your head told you, the thing you need to do in this world is to silently give to your parents who ignore you, your boyfriend who has changed his heart, and your brother who can't distinguish right from wrong. You don't need to explain, because until you die, they will unconditionally believe the fake daughter in the family. But it doesn't matter, you just need to choose to commit suicide when the disappointment accumulates to a certain extent. After you die, all the people who have let you down will turn around and love you. You remained silent without responding, but the system seemed to not notice at all and kept yelling excitedly in your mind. At that time, they will all regret it, when they find out that the second female lead is the bad guy. And you, who have been sincerely giving to them all along, are already dead and can never come back. They will have to spend the rest of their lives in pain and tears. Just thinking about it is so satisfying. You must act a little more aggrieved now. The more severely you are abused in the front, the deeper their regret will be in the back. It was still chattering on and didn't notice at all that your expression had become impatient. Finally, you could no longer stand the restlessness in your heart. Without hesitation, you picked up the fruit knife on the table and stabbed the fake daughter beside you who was still crying. The blade went through her palm, nailing her whole hand firmly to the dining table. She was originally going to accuse you of looking down on her and not wanting to cut this birthday cake with her, but now, she could no longer maintain her innocent and weak disguise, and her whole face was twisted to the extreme. Her scream rang out, and her wailing mouth opened so wide that you could see the back of her throat, and tears and snot flew out together. Everyone was shocked by this sudden change, so much so that after the splashing blood stained half of the tablecloth red, your own brother standing behind her finally reacted. He rushed forward in a hurry and pushed you away, and then he was at a loss about the pierced palm of the fake daughter. In the end, they didn't dare to pull out the knife easily. And the dining table and the fake daughter were taken to the hospital together. When they left, you looked at the gloomy eyes of your parents and brother that seemed to be dripping with water, and happily wiped the cream on your lips. When your bright red tongue licked it, you felt a sense of pleasure from the bottom of your heart. You are very happy now, but the system in your head doesn't dare to speak much. Host, your method has seriously gone wrong. It wanted to say something. But the next second it could only emit a string of garbled characters. It didn't realize that you are a psychiatric patient. Both your brain and your heart are like a chaotic sea, where only storms and tsunamis come. These things that never give you a moment of peace can easily swallow up the technological parasitic product that keeps yelling in your mind. You have hurt the most precious fake daughter in the family. Your parents and brother vowed to teach you a lesson. But the fake daughter was seriously injured. That hand of hers, which she was proud of as a pianist, it was mostly disabled under your destruction. Your parents have been by her side all the time, comforting and accompanying her. They are unwilling to give up the slightest hope. As long as they can make her recover as before, they will spare no expense. And when your palm was deliberately scalded by boiling water by the fake daughter, you didn't need so much care. If they just called a doctor for you in time or let you go out to buy some anti-inflammatory medicine and bandage it up, you wouldn't have been unable to pick up a scalpel anymore due to muscle infection caused by the wound inflammation. And all of this was just because the fake daughter told them that you deliberately didn't take the glass of water she handed you and that you wanted to embarrass her. So your parents wanted to teach you a lesson. They ignored the fact that the glass of water was hot enough to scald someone directly and insisted on making you kneel at home to reflect. You were only allowed to go back to your narrow little bedroom to rest until you fainted due to the wound infection. You ended your career for such a ridiculous reason, and your boyfriend came to your home overnight, not to comfort you, but to make the fake daughter, who was heartbroken by you, happy. And now, after hearing about what you did at the fake daughter's birthday party, your boyfriend suspended the meeting abroad and specially took a plane to rush back overnight. A cat that hurts people has to pay the price. This was the first sentence he said to you after you welcomed him into the house. The servants in the villa had all been sent away by him. It was as if they knew what was going to happen next. Some of them gave you sympathetic looks when they left, but of course, there was more of a sense of watching the fun in those looks. The next second, the door was closed. Just as your boyfriend was still taking off his belt, you didn't hesitate to take out the vase hidden behind you and smash it over his head. The blood stimulated your nerves, and your boyfriend fell to the ground. His fair skin made your desire to abuse him rise greatly. You mercilessly picked up the fragments of the vase and scratched one mark after another on his skin. After a long time, your boyfriend woke up from the pain. You unhurriedly took out the ropes and handcuffs from his coat and tied them all on his body. At this moment, there was already fear in the look your boyfriend gave you, but you showed no mercy. You grabbed his hair and slammed his head against the cold wall. It was not until his pleading for mercy became weak that you were in a good mood. You skillfully took out his car keys and drove him to the secret room in the wilderness. Of course, you knew what your boyfriend was going to do to you. Over the years, as long as you dared to make the fake daughter even the slightest bit unhappy, he would punish you, and his methods of abuse were always so monotonous. Your original self had a severe fear of enclosed spaces. He built a secret room like a cage in a desolate suburb. There was no food or water. All that accompanied you was endless darkness. The only thing you could do was to keep repenting every day and promise them that you would never dare to oppose the fake daughter again and would never make her the slightest bit unhappy, until he softened his heart and, as if showing mercy, untied the chains and let you out. Then, like taming an animal, he would touch the back of your neck and say earnestly, "I'm doing this for your own good. You are older than Sarah. You should learn to be sensible. If I don't do this, you will become an extremely vicious girl in the future." And now, you have become an extremely vicious girl. When you threw your boyfriend into the secret room, your smile was even a little cruel. Under the illumination of the moonlight, you could clearly see the almost extreme fear on his face, which made his face look a little ferocious. Your positions were almost reversed. He only had a little strength left. But the words in his mouth were still tough. "Break up," he said. "I really misjudged you. You turned out to be this kind of person. Since you were a child, what you hated the most was hearing others say that you were this kind of person or that kind of person. You are clearly a wild dog that cannot be defined in the wind." "Okay." So you picked up the hammer beside you and mercilessly smashed it at his head. The hammer missed, but he peed his pants in fright. The business prodigy who had always been high and mighty now had a large brown stain on his suit pants. And the smell in the room became a bit unpleasant in an instant, but it didn't matter. You could leave easily. You were not afraid of the police finding this place. According to your observation, there are no police in the world of sadomasochistic novels. No matter how excessive the things you do are, these wealthy families always seem to have all kinds of reasons not to call the police. Moreover, the owner of this secret room is your boyfriend. Now you just locked him inside. He will always find a way out. If he calls the police, I don't know if he can explain what this secret room, which is almost a one-to-one replica of a prison cell, was built for. As you expected, your boyfriend was found by his assistant on the third day. He escaped, but he didn't call the police. He just didn't dare to come to you for a short time, and your family also received the sad news at the same time. The fake daughter's hand could no longer be cured. This future great pianist has now fallen. You were very happy to hear that. You specially cooked a table full of delicious dishes and waited for them to come back. Unfortunately, your parents didn't appreciate it. As soon as they came back, they overturned the dining table. Your father even stepped forward and slapped you hard, your tongue pressed against your gums, feeling the smell of blood in your mouth, and you slowly laughed. They wanted you to kneel in punishment and also wanted to send you back to the ancestral house to get rid of you. They said you were an ungrateful person and that they shouldn't have recognized you in the first place. Yes, when you returned to this family, you were already quite old. At that time, because your adoptive parents passed away, you had no choice but to come to the door to recognize your relatives, hoping that they could support you to finish your studies. You also swore that you would compensate and repay them after you got a job, but they all still thought that you had ulterior motives and wanted to climb up the social ladder, especially the fake daughter. She would spread rumors at school, saying that you were the daughter of the family's nanny, and also that you once stripped naked to seduce the family's 50-year-old housekeeper for 1,000 yuan, and no matter how absurd the words were, your own brother would testify for her. Proving that it was true, you have always had a hard time in this family. After going to college, you never took a single penny from home again, but even so, they still thought that you had some plans. Now, everyone has finally decided to judge you, but it doesn't matter, because you clearly saw that after they were tired of scolding, they all drank the pot of water that you placed in the most prominent position. At night, you knelt in the hall, counting the time and watching them fall one by one. The surveillance cameras all over the house had already been turned off by you. This time, you didn't spare the servants in the villa either, because you knew that all along, they had been tipping off your boyfriend. They were your boyfriend's eyes and ears and also the supporters of the fake daughter. When you were in this house, they always appeared in front of you intentionally or unintentionally, deliberately making things difficult for you. And then saying some things like you didn't deserve it. They were consciously guiding and isolating you, hoping that you would choose between dying and giving up, and your original self lived up to their expectations and thus suffered from severe depression. At this moment, you slowly stood up from the hall, stretched your sore legs, and prepared to do something big. You were not in a hurry to harvest your prey. Instead, you first went to the kitchen, admired a bunch of tableware, and became excited all over. Since you really couldn't decide which tool to use, you gave them a chance, so you tied them all together. You were going to play a game with everyone. These people have all been drugged by you now, and they are completely powerless. Before they have the ability to escape, they need to tell a truth every 10 minutes, a truth about you that was distorted in the past. The person who tells the truth can be safe in this round, while the person who is identified will be punished. In the resentful gazes of everyone, you asked the first question: were you really just accidentally lost back then? Were you really just accidentally lost back then? As soon as this question was asked, a trace of guilt flashed across the face of your brother, who was sitting on the ground and swearing, but he still spoke with great confidence. Otherwise, you are a troublemaker. Back then, you insisted on playing with human traffickers yourself, causing mom and dad to not be able to find you for all these years and live in guilt. You still have the nerve to mention this matter. The more he talked, the more excited he became. He completely believed it himself and stood on the moral high ground to scold you. But as soon as you came here, you already knew all the truth through the system in your head. Unfortunately, he was lying, so, in his gradually panicked eyes, you slowly grasped the phalanx of his little finger and then broke it in the opposite direction. The sound of the joint dislocation and your brother's scream sounded together. After all, you are just a little girl. Doing something like breaking someone else's finger like this will still make you feel strenuous. So, under his terrified gaze, you leisurely took out your big wrench, pliers, tweezers, scalpel, from the tool bag. Your brother began to apologize. He cried bitterly, "I was wrong. I didn't take good care of you back then," which gave the human traffickers a chance. "Mom and Dad were starting a business back then and left you with me every day. I didn't even have my own time. I was just impatient." A shrill scream rang out. This time, his left thumb was broken because he still refused to tell the truth. The dislocated finger quickly became congested, swollen, and purple. The fake daughter beside him was already shaking like a leaf from fear. Watching their beloved son being abused by you, your parents looked at you with hatred in their eyes and kept cursing. It was not until you selected the third finger that your brother, who was lying on the ground covered in cold sweat, opened his mouth with a weak voice. "I sold you," he said. "I sold you to the human traffickers." The expressions on your parents' faces became shocked, and even the fake daughter was so surprised that she forgot to shake. For a moment, all the eyes were focused on your brother, but he became ruthless. He raised his head and roared at you. "What's wrong with me? I was still a child myself. Just because Mom and Dad didn't have time for their business, was I supposed to be your nanny? Do you know how much I hated you? With the 200 yuan I got from selling you, I played in the internet cafe for a whole day. That was the most enjoyable day of my childhood. That's all the value you, a burden, had." After saying that, his eyes darkened. His voice was a bit distorted due to the unbearable pain. He said, "You were already gone. Why did you come back? Clearly, our life was good now. Just because you came back, everything got messed up again. You should disappear forever and rot in some garbage dump." After saying that, he closed his eyes resignedly, waiting for the revenge you would bring, and across from him, your mother's expression became increasingly complicated. She had always been proud of her son and believed that she had the happiest and most fulfilling family in the world. Now, the baseness and ugliness revealed by her graceful son were beyond her acceptance. In the end, she chose to turn her head away, and you didn't take revenge on anyone either. You just nodded calmly and put away the props in your hand. After all, your brother had told the truth, and according to the rules, you should start a new round of the game. With your biological brother's example before them, no one in the whole room dared to cheat or be slippery anymore. They almost rushed to answer whatever you asked. As a result, your mother learned that the diamond necklace that disappeared when you were first recognized and brought home wasn't stolen by you. Instead, it was a deliberate frame-up by the fake daughter. And it wasn't you who offended the son of your father's business partner at school. He just wanted to pursue the fake daughter and deliberately joined forces with her to bully and make things difficult for you. As more and more truths were revealed by everyone, the expressions on your parents' faces became more and more embarrassed. The so-called happy and fulfilling family was just a fig leaf covering up these ugly things. Once that veil was lifted, the ugliness inside was something they didn't even dare to face directly. Finally, their once high-held heads showed a tendency to lower. Their tone of speaking to you also became unexpectedly milder. "We didn't know about what happened back then," they said, trying to maintain the last bit of parental dignity and attempting to save face. "So they said, but you were also at fault. If your personality wasn't so bad, if you were willing to get close to your parents and explain things to us, how could we have misunderstood you so easily?" They argued forcefully. But the words they said made even themselves blush all the way to their necks. After venting, they looked at you with a hint of expectation. They were expecting your reaction. If you could show even a little self-reflection and guilt, they would consider accepting you later. It would be best if your conscience suddenly awoke now. You untied them, and then apologized to them. In that case, they could refrain from sending you away and would compensate you in the days to come, but you didn't do that. You didn't even listen to them at all. You were just completely focused on your game. Previously, before you went crazy and were admitted to the psychiatric hospital, you were someone who loved games very much. No one could disturb your happy game time. So this time, you simply made a fist and pressed the imaginary microphone in your hand against your mother's face, who was still glaring at you. Are you even listening to us? She shrieked angrily, and you just calmly repeated your question. May I ask if Sarah seduced my boyfriend to approach Kevin first? Seeing that you were completely impervious to reason, your mother seemed to truly realize at this moment that you were crazy. She looked at the fake daughter sitting opposite her from a distance, who was tied up tightly. The latter had tears all over her face, and her eyes were full of pleading when she looked at your mother. There was no doubt that, with your biological brother who had his 2 fingers broken right in front of them. Everyone present now was afraid of your revenge. The fake daughter, who had offended you the most severely on a daily basis, was especially terrified. Finally, your mother closed her eyes, as if making a certain determination. She no longer looked at you. Her lips were trembling, and her voice was out of tune when she spoke, yet it was so firm. Sarah didn't know anything about it. I saw that the boy Kevin liked Sarah, so I made the match for them. Sarah was innocent throughout this matter. Unfortunately, she was lying. You stood up and looked down at her, with an unmaskable look of disappointment on your face. You thought she would be a smart player, but she gave such a stupid answer. This made you feel somewhat bored, but you still decided to give her another chance. So you turned around and cast your gaze on the fake daughter who was in tears, and you asked her softly, "Excuse me, are all the words she just said true?" A thunderbolt struck, and the shining lightning illuminated the chainsaw you had just picked up in your hand clearly. The fake daughter suddenly went crazy and pointed at your mother opposite, shouting, "Yes, it's her, it's all this old hag's doing." Thunder rumbled outside the house continuously, but the fake daughter's accusation was even louder than the rolling thunder, making your mother freeze in shock on the spot. "It's all this old hag's fault. I didn't want to do it originally. I've already said that brother Kevin is my sister's boyfriend, and I couldn't break my sister's heart." She said that my sister, you, didn't deserve such a good man as Kevin and insisted on pushing him onto me. The fake daughter's face was deathly pale, yet she still forced herself to kneel on the ground and looked up at you with a flattering smile. Out of the corner of her eye, the wound on her pierced hand started bleeding again, but she seemed not to notice it. There was only a strong desire to survive in her eyes. Ignoring the angry expressions of your parents, she crawled on her knees to your side and tried hard to lean against your calf. There was the same cruel smile on her face that had always looked weak and innocent as on yours. She said, "Kill them, sister, kill those 2 old things and avenge the past you," she said. Everything in the past was ordered by them. They just thought that since you had been living outside for so long, you must have been tainted already. They were afraid that you would embarrass them, so they instigated me to target you. Sister, I was just a tool they used. The really bad ones are those 2 old things. I actually didn't want to treat you like this. Every day in the past, I was unhappy." When she reached the emotional part, she even choked up. Tears fell from her eyes one by one. But they couldn't hide the greed in her eyes. That's right. If she could incite the crazy you to kill your parents tonight, then after the sun rose, she would become the biggest beneficiary of this game. After all, if your parents died, you would also go to prison, and that substantial fortune would eventually fall into the hands of her and your good-for-nothing brother. From the fake daughter's monologue, you could tell that she was also disgusted by the need to please your parents day after day. Deep down, she thought that your parents were just 2 old things who should have died long ago. But after all, you wouldn't do that. You just wanted to play the game and had no interest in becoming a murderer. According to the game rules, the fake daughter lied and should be punished. Those evil deeds were always done by her out of her own will. The motivation behind all this was just because she was afraid that you, as the real daughter, would compete for favor with her after returning to the Lin family. You looked at her mouth that was still opening and closing. Those rows of white and neatly arranged teeth were really endearing. You smiled, bent down to pick up the wrench on the ground, and smashed it down hard. Blood spattered everywhere, and her noisy instigation turned into screams at this moment. She begged you for mercy and asked the people around for help, but your parents just watched her coldly. This time, they wouldn't be angry because of her tears anymore. Their indifference at this moment was even greater than when they treated you before, and now that you had punished the fake daughter, the next person to be punished was your mother, looking at you walking towards her step by step. Her eyes were full of distress. Previously, she had always looked at the fake daughter with such eyes. When she looked at you, there was more indifference and disappointment. And now, she seemed to have become a real mother belonging to you. Even though the wrench in your hand was still dripping blood drop by drop, she didn't seem to be afraid at all. Previously, she didn't love you, she was more willing to favor and believe in the fake daughter she had raised with her own hands. At that time, your docility was seen as cowardice in her eyes, your candor was seen as vulgarity in her eyes. No matter what you did, she could only see your bad side, and now, she began to feel sorry for you, although the driving force that made her quickly assume the role of your mother came from her fear of you and the fake daughter's betrayal. But now in her eyes, you went crazy because you were wronged and suffered a lot of grievances in the past. Your cruelty was out of necessity. She had already seen through the true face of the fake daughter and was even disappointed in the character of her own son who sold his biological sister to human traffickers. Even though it was you who had hurt people repeatedly now, she thought you were good, and she was already prepared to love you, so she looked at you, her eyes becoming gentler and her voice also becoming softer. She called you baby and also softly called your name, Summer. Mom already knows the truth. Sarah did something wrong in the past, and Mom is apologizing to you. If it were in an ordinary sadomasochistic novel, a sincere apology from parents who had always misunderstood their daughter could often make the female protagonist turn back in time. A happy ending at this moment would also be possible. You looked at her face full of expectation. She was so nervous that she unconsciously clenched her hands. Seeing that you stopped in your tracks, your father beside you also quickly opened his mouth to chime in. However, compared to your mother who truly wanted to make up with you, he, who was scared out of his wits, spoke with much less sincerity. He was eager to shirk responsibility. It's all that Sarah's fault. Mom and Dad have always wanted to treat you well from the very beginning. Summer, now you let go of Mom and Dad, and we can sit down and have a good talk. Clear up all the misunderstandings. Mom and Dad will definitely treat you well in the future. In order to move you, he even gave up on his own son who was still glaring at him beside him. He threatened that there would only be you as a daughter in the Lin family in the future. All his property would be given to you. At this moment, it seemed that you were loved by everyone, but you didn't need love. After all, as mentioned at the very beginning of the story, you were a psychiatric patient, and now you just wanted to play the game with them, and at present, they had all broken the rules. Punishing two people at the same time required you to stop and think carefully about what different punishments to give them to make it exciting enough, but the way you were deep in thought caused them to misunderstand. In that instant, the look of confidence returned to your father's face. This old fox who had long been in the business world. He was certain that you had softened your heart and that you had been deeply moved by the conditions he had proposed, while feeling proud. There was also a hint of disdain in his eyes. Women were just soft-hearted and would make a big fuss over emotions and love all day long. That's what he was thinking in his heart. In fact, in the past, he hadn't failed to see the fake daughter's framing of you. It's just that he tacitly accepted these petty squabbles in the family as something within the scope of what women were responsible for. He was already very tired from working hard outside. As long as the matter didn't come to his attention and bother him, he didn't care who was wronged or who suffered from severe depression as a result. Even, he didn't care about the existence of his daughter at all. After all, he already had a biological son who would inherit his wealth in the future. Whether the daughter was real or fake, she was just a vase raised for the purpose of a marriage alliance. He had never really cared much about a vase, just like at this moment. After seeing that you were moved by a few words of concession from your parents, the smile on his face spread the widest. The next second, having thought of the punishment method, you raised your head, with the same smile on your face, sarcastic and contemptuous, as if looking at the lowest and most despicable ant. When your parents saw this, their pupils suddenly shrank. Summer, realizing something was wrong, his trembling voice didn't have time to form a complete sentence. The next moment, the wrench in your hand had already struck straight at his head. Your mother's scream suddenly rang out and then stopped abruptly. Your father fell to the ground. There was a gash on his head, and blood was still oozing out continuously, and your mother fainted from fright. Sure enough, using the most primitive means was the most satisfying. You gave yourself a thumbs up in your heart and looked around at the scene with satisfaction. Very well. Everyone had received their due punishment, however. It seemed that your parents couldn't participate in the next round of the game for the time being, so your gaze returned to your brother and the fake daughter. The moment their eyes met yours, their expressions changed from venomous to fearful. You thought of the system in your head. The system said that the ultimate goal of your coming to this world was to make all of them feel regretful for what they had done to you in the past. So you squatted down in front of your brother and asked him, "Brother, do you regret it?" He glared at you, his tightly clenched lips trembling continuously. It seemed that he wanted to say something tough, but in the end, he burst into tears with a loud cry. So you had to turn your gaze to the fake daughter and asked her, "Do you regret it?" 3 of her teeth were missing. Upon hearing this, she nodded repeatedly. "I was wrong." Tears mixed with blood foam spurted out of her mouth, and she looked very pitiful now, but when you looked at her like this, you could always think of the even more pitiful appearance of the original body when she was being bullied at school. The original body didn't just lose 3 teeth, the original body was once pressed in the school restroom by them and had her entire chin shattered. At that time, she was also lying on the floor helplessly, swallowing blood foam and tears down her throat, since there were all sorts of reasons for her to be beaten. She couldn't even remember whether the reason for those wealthy kids to execute justice that day was to deal with the thieving nanny's daughter, or because the fake daughter's male god had smiled at the original body. When the head teacher who had stood up for her before was still around, the original body's days weren't that difficult, but it didn't take long for that young and righteous female teacher to disappear from this school. After all, the principal of this school was the father of the fake daughter's best friend. You were immersed in such memories and suddenly felt that this game was boring. At the moment, the fake daughter was crying hysterically, and she kept repenting to you. She spilled out all the things she had done in the past. It even included that she had covered for her father and his mistress in front of her mother in order to please her father. Your mother, who had been scared into a faint by you just now, happened to wake up at this moment. After hearing these words, she was first stunned, and then she also started crying. Her crying was no less loud than that of her terrified eldest son. She cried and cursed, calling the fake daughter an ungrateful person and scolding herself for misjudging people all these years. As she cursed, she regretted. She had 2 daughters. One was a bad apple, and the other had been driven crazy by them. She regretted that if she had cared a little more about her biological daughter in the past and talked to her more, things wouldn't be like this now. One more person regretted, but you didn't feel excited because of it. The thing called the system before had told you that the regret and belated love of these people were the things that the female protagonist of the sadomasochistic novel wanted most. It was also what the audience most wanted to see. For those girls who couldn't grow up in a happy childhood, love was a precious thing that they couldn't obtain throughout their lives. Love was more important than anything else. In addition, they should also have good character, to ensure their purity and innocence. Even if they were hurt, they couldn't retaliate. They had to endure silently and then give to everyone. Only in this way could they receive the guilt of others when their grievances were finally redressed. A word of regret seemed to be able to erase all the previous injuries, but you still couldn't understand what the use of such regret was, and the so-called love didn't make you feel more interested either. Rather than being loved, you still preferred to make your fists stronger. You thought that maybe you didn't use the right method, so you turned your gaze to your brother who had just stopped crying again, according to what the system said. The so-called crematorium scene must be achieved when the person who hurt you the most regrets and says they love you. In order to achieve the most satisfying accomplishment, you thought about it. All the misfortunes of the original body originated from being sold to human traffickers by her biological brother at the age of 4. So this time, you asked seriously, "Brother, do you love me?" Upon hearing this, the tears that your brother had just stopped shedding welled up again. He thought you were still playing a game with him, and all this in front of him was still a test. He didn't dare to lie anymore, so he cried out loudly, "I love Sarah. I have feelings for her beyond the affection between siblings. I want to sleep with her. She promised to be with me after driving you away. I'm sorry for you. Please let me go." As soon as these words were spoken, your mother's crying stopped in shock, and even your father, who had been pretending to be dead, couldn't help opening his eyes and started cursing at him. Words like beast and short-sighted kept pouring out of his mouth, but you could vaguely understand that your father was so angry because he thought his son should have a better future. This kind of mentality might not be love, but it was definitely closer to love than hurting someone and then repenting to her. After all, blindly enduring grievances and giving in won't lead to a future. That night, you thought a lot. The family behind you had already ignored you. They were scolding, accusing, and attacking each other, and you were immersed in your thoughts. As a psychiatric patient, you were thinking so much for the first time, you felt like your head was about to explode. The thing called the system took the opportunity to run back. when it saw the miserable scene on the ground, it couldn't help crying out to the sky that it was all over. However, the next second, it let out a surprised exclamation. It actually all meets the standards, whether it's the regret value or the love value. No, this isn't love. They mostly feel awe of you. This kind of awe has been automatically transformed into love under the instinct of survival. My God, host, now all of them love you, it exclaimed, as if opening the door to a new world. It couldn't understand why the female protagonist could complete these tasks while she was alive. After all, they had hurt the female protagonist so much before and never felt guilty. You thought about it and calmly told it that the key point might not lie in the female protagonist being hurt, but in them being hurt themselves. People were like this. They would never know the pain until it happened to them, so it was very stupid to arouse the conscience of the perpetrators with one's own pain. Even though you were a lunatic who was often not sober, you still thought all this was absurd. You and the system were speechless to each other and sat in silence until dawn. Behind you, the once harmonious family wasn't so quiet anymore. They almost used all the vicious words they could think of to attack each other, until your brother, who used to be a great filial son, even threatened your parents that once he was rescued, he would seize their power immediately and drive them out of the house. At that moment, a certain spirit that had been supporting your father disappeared, and he completely collapsed. Finally, in the end, your boyfriend, who hadn't received any news from the fake daughter all night, came to the door. This time he was smarter and brought dozens of bodyguards. Even so, he was still shocked by everything that had happened in the house. He thought he could see you being dealt with by your family, but now your family had been dealt with by you. He became even more afraid to look you in the eye. He didn't even dare to show concern for the fake daughter. As if afraid of your revenge later, he ran away quickly. No matter how the fake daughter called him from behind, he didn't look back. Even so, the bodyguards still did their duty and rescued your family members. The family, who had endured a whole night of torture and were covered in wounds, couldn't care for each other immediately as they used to after being rescued. The father knew that his son wanted to seize power, drive him out, and be with his stepsister. The mother knew that her husband had cheated, and her daughter and son had always been accomplices. The brother knew that his stepsister had been deliberately leading him on and had been playing both sides between him and his own sister's boyfriend, and the stepsister cursed that all of them were not good people and couldn't protect herself. Just overnight, the former beauty was gone forever. Now, relatives were no longer like relatives, and lovers were more like sworn enemies. They were silent towards each other and hated each other. Surprisingly, no one mentioned the matter of sending you back to the ancestral house for judgment anymore. As you expected, this time, they still didn't call the police. The family went to the hospital for identification. Their injuries were one worse than the other, but they still wanted to solve the matter privately. They found someone to do a psychiatric evaluation for you. After getting the results, they took you to a psychiatric hospital. When you left, only your mother expressed her reluctance to part with you. She told you that she was going to get a divorce, but no matter what, she would wait for you. After you were cured, she would be your mother again. You thought this was really boring and chose to look at her with your nostrils. As for the other people, they couldn't wait for you to never come back, but they also went their separate ways and could never go back to the past. However, the person they least wanted to see was still you. After all, they only plotted against each other secretly, but you would really tie them up and kill them. But what they didn't realize was that you were a psychiatric patient. Escaping from a psychiatric hospital was exactly your strength. Not only that, but you now also had a psychiatric diagnosis certificate. You were invincible, kid. In the rest of your life, you would be like a ghost, randomly appearing beside any of them and disrupting their lives that they had finally calmed down again. No one could do anything to you because you were a psychiatric patient whom they had driven crazy with their own hands, and they would be tortured for all eternity. As for who you were, of course, you were a psychiatric patient. You were in the last world and the world before that. Wherever there was a female protagonist in a sadomasochistic novel, there was your presence. Just because they wanted to create a hellish living environment for the female protagonist and also required her to have flawless moral character, they required an innocent and soft lamb, whose horns couldn't even be hard, to live among tigers and wolves, not to resist, and not to have a temper. This was originally a fallacy and against human nature, but it deceived many people. Gradually, more and more girls were required to be like this, so you were born, you were their negative emotions. They all said you were crazy, but sometimes you felt extremely sober, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth when being hurt. This was the first truth you wanted to teach everyone. You were the anger, the wildness, and the vulgarity of girls. You were all the characteristics that made them be accused of not being the perfect sacrifice. You were a madman. You fought your way out with your fists. What you sought wasn't the love of others, but to be respected and feared. You wanted to stand on the peak of equality and talk to them, even if you were covered in blood when fighting back. You were the real female protagonist. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.